Thank you, June. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you in this virtual format today. I have to admit that ever since joining the Society in March of last year, I'd really been looking forward to attending this event in person and meeting everybody face to face. But given the current circumstances, I'm just glad that we were able to adapt the Patient Connect meeting to this format and to have so many of you join. This is really great. I really want to thank all of my colleagues, all of you, the participants, as well as all of our generous sponsors for making this meeting possible. As you probably know, the FSHD Society will be hosting the Voice of the Patient Forum, VOPF as we call it, or as the Food and Drug Administration calls them, an externally led patient-focused drug development meeting, also known as a PFDD meeting, this coming Monday, 2 days from now. This meeting was initially scheduled as an in-person gathering in Washington, D.C. on April 21st. But when the pandemic started and travel restrictions were put into place, we rescheduled it to coincide with a Patient Connect meeting. At that time, we thought that surely by June, everyone would be able to travel again. Well, like everyone else, we've been adapting our activities to minimize any health impact and still move forward with important initiatives. Thankfully, just like we've been able to adapt a Patient Connect meeting to a virtual setting, the Food and Drug Administration has just started adopting virtual formats for the Voice of the Patient forums. We are really fortunate that by having locked down the date with them, which is this coming Monday, June 29th, and with you, this important meeting can take place as scheduled and not be delayed indefinitely. This is really too important of a meeting to keep pushing back. You might also find it interesting that the FSHD Voice of the Patient Forum will actually be the second ever all-virtual PFDD meeting for the FDA. Having seen the first one in early June, I've been really impressed by how impactful the virtual format can be, so I'm really confident that ours will be just as effective as the in-person format would have been. Because of the change in format, I've been asked to briefly the purpose of the meeting, the actual meeting agenda, format for each session, and how everyone can participate and have their voice included in the FDA report. So what is this VOPF meeting? The Voice of the Patient Forum, also known as a PFDD meeting, was developed by the Food and Drug Administration to learn about diseases and treatment expectations from the patient community and their caregivers directly. The FDA staff has expertise in many domains, but with an estimated 7,000 rare diseases alone, it's really not possible for them to know everything about every disease, nor is it really reasonable for them to be able to learn about diseases just by reading a couple of scientific papers from the literature. The FDA realizes that the patients are their own best experts when it comes to explaining how it is to live with the disease. So they developed this meeting structure to collect firsthand experience and opinions from the entire patient community. They really need to understand the disease, how it impacts daily life, and what are the most debilitating symptoms and what the community is looking for in a treatment. This information that's collected during the meeting provides the context for the agency to then better be able to assess risks and benefits when they are evaluating potential treatments for approval. Who's going to be at this meeting? Well, the active participants are hopefully going to include all of you, patients, caregivers, family members, your loved ones. In addition, the meeting is going to be moderated by James Valentine. James was at the FDA when the VOPF format was being developed by the FDA. He's now helps moderate them for most groups. James, along with his colleague Larry Bauer, probably have been involved in more than 2/3 of these types of meetings. They're the most experienced people in this area, and we're really happy to have them helping out with the VOPF meeting on FSHD. James is going to be joined by a co-moderator, Mark Stone, the Society's president and CEO, whom you all should know by now. In listening mode, we will have the FDA, of course, they're going to be present, as well as a mix of different government agencies. So for example, the NINDS, the National Institute for Neurological Disorder and Strokes, CDER, which is the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, CBER, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, just to name a few. Pharmaceutical industry is also going to be participating in listening mode. These meetings are really important to them just to make sure that the therapeutic strategies they're developing are addressing the needs that the patient community is looking for. They can't have a disconnect between what they're developing and what the community needs. We can also expect some researchers to be joining in, as well as other nonprofit groups such as Friends of FSH Research, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and a few others. Of course, the entire FSHD staff will be there working quietly in the background to make sure that things go smoothly. What is the outcome of this meeting? Well, all of the testimonials, discussions, polling questions that we'll talk about very soon will be captured and documented in the Voice of the Patient report on FSHD for the FDA to review. The final report is then going to be distributed to the division directors from all of those agencies I mentioned earlier. And in turn, these directors will make sure that their staff use and review the report whenever they are to engage on any FSHD related project. In addition to the report, which is going to be made public, it's going to serve as a reference guide not only to the FDA, but also to the pharmaceutical industry. So what can you expect on the day of the meeting? Well, here's the agenda. The meeting is scheduled to start at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and last through about 2:30 p.m. that day. The meeting starts off with several brief introductions, welcoming remarks from Mark Stone, the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Then there's going to be an address by Dr. Michelle Campbell from the FDA, who's going to be joining us and giving an overview of the importance of the meeting and how their agencies make use of the information. This will then be followed by a brief scientific description on the pathophysiology and clinical manifestation of FSHD. This is going to be given by Dr. Catherine Wagner from the Kennedy Krieger Institute. The meeting then begins with the first of two moderated sessions. The format for both of these is the same, but the topics are slightly different. For the first session, the topic is, how does FSHD impact your daily life? The second session focuses on the current treatments being used and treatment expectations you may have. The meeting then concludes with a brief review of the main discussion points as well as some closing remarks. So let's take a closer look at the format for each of the moderated sessions. Each session begins with personal testimonies from a series of panelists, and the panelists have been asked to provide specific examples on their experiences with FSHD. In session 1, you will hear how FSHD has impacted the lives of their loved ones. In session 2, you will hear how they're managing their symptoms and what they're looking for in a treatment. The goal of these testimonies is to provide the FDA some perspective on the very many different ways the disease manifests itself in different people, all the ways patients cope to manage their symptoms, as well as their expectations of therapies being developed. These testimonies really set the stage for the moderate discussion that comes next. Since it's impossible to capture all of the unique experiences from just a few testimonies, our moderator, James Valentine, will be joined by a set of panelists for a moderated discussion and continue to gather information on these specific topics. James will also be taking phone calls from participants dialing in, as well as read incoming statements emailed to him during the session. So there are a number of different ways for everyone to share their stories, experiences, and expectations, and have their views included in the Voice of the Patient report to the FDA. In preparation for your participation, it's really helpful to think of specific ideas, experiences that can really illustrate or paint a picture for the audience, which in this case is the FDA. For example, in the first session on living with FSHD, what is it like on the best or worst days? What are specific important activities that you cannot fully do? What are your worries and fears for the future? The second session on treatment challenges, you might be thinking of examples of what are you currently doing? How well is it working? And what are the downsides? Short of a complete cure, What specific things would you look in an ideal treatment so you can do what's important to you? In addition to the moderated discussions, each session will also have a series of polling questions you can answer via your mobile phone or computer browser window. These will be multiple choice questions aimed at capturing opinions from the community at large. What kind of polling questions can you expect? Well, as you guessed it, the questions center around the main two themes of the meeting. How is FSHD impacting your life or the life of your loved ones? And what are you looking for in a treatment? Most of you probably remember receiving a series of emails starting as early as January of the year, promoting the VOPF meeting. Many of these emails had links to surveys embedded in them that we asked you to complete. I believe there were a total of 5 surveys that were sent out. And we know you received them because over 600 people answered these surveys and provided the content that was needed to shape our polling questions. Really can't thank you enough for this. Some of the surveys had open-ended questions asking you to write in your answers. June, Kinoshita went through all of the answers and organized them into groups so the questions could be turned into multiple choice format for the electronic polling. This was a lot of work and she did a phenomenal job. Of course, in addition to the questions aimed at the main themes of the meeting, we also collected important demographic information. For the VOPF meeting itself, the goal is to hear from the entire community. So these types of demographic questions lets us know if we've successfully managed to reach everyone and whether we're getting comprehensive representation from the whole community. So how can we guarantee broad representation for this meeting? By getting all of you to participate. If you haven't registered for the meeting yet, no worries at all. This is a virtual event, so we should be able to accommodate everybody. You're going to be able to go onto our website on the day of the meeting itself and fill out a form and get directed to the live stream for the event. For those of you who have registered for the meeting in advance, the broadcasting company streaming the meeting will be sending you a link with instructions on how to connect. During the meeting itself, they will display a phone number during the moderated discussion portion of the session, so you can call in with your comments and personal experiences. There will also be an email address where you can send your written comments for the topics being discussed. Actually, this link will continue to remain open for about a month after the meeting has taken place. And this is to give everybody who may not have gotten through on Monday on the phone or wasn't able to connect and write down their experiences, to share their perspectives and to make sure that they get included in the Voice of the Patient report on FSHD to the FDA. So with this, I want to thank you all for your attention, and we all look forward to seeing you again this coming Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern for the Voice of the Patient Forum on FSHD. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.